see all of your shining faces. Hello, Team Rise and Fit. Welcome to the team call for Monday, October 21st. Exciting stuff here tonight. We just have 2 announcements, and then we're going to rock and roll into our guest speaker. And I know I can see so many of you on the screen, and I know there'll be more popping on soon that love the book. So we'll honor Maxie's time here. But I want to share 2 things real fast. This next Saturday, October 26th, is our team event, our live team event here in Vinton. And if you are going, I need to get them final numbers by Wednesday. We're going to be doing the crafting time at 5:30, and then there'll be chili and maybe pizza, but for chili for sure. If you want to bring your own food, cool. There'll be wine and all the crafting with those activities at the pumpkin farm. So 5:30 on Saturday. Let me know by Wednesday if you're coming. There's the event page, it's in the team page as well. And then the second thing is, yes, we were just at Leadership in Arizona. There was, I think, 10 of us total when we kind of think of the grander RISE&FIT group that were there. And it was a ton of fun, learned lots. And tomorrow night on Team Happy and Fit call, Julianne and I will be sharing our top takeaways from that. And so make sure you jump on that call for all that good stuff. But tonight we have a very special guest. I really wanted my friend Addie Yoder to be on the call tonight. She's the one that actually recommended your book and was like, Kim, you have to read this book. And then I read it and was like, team, we have to read this book. And so she wasn't able to be on tonight. But we're just super blessed to have Maxie McCoy with us. And she wrote the book, You're Not Lost, which ironically, a couple of you have said, I've since lost my book. So funny.
I've not heard that before. That's incredible.
It is technically lost, but yeah. They'll find it. They know the good stuff. And I asked a couple questions of a few people earlier, and they submitted a few. But as you are going through, as she's talking tonight, guys, there'll be a time at the end for Q&A. So if you have questions, type them in the chat, and I'll be monitoring that as we get rolling here. Yeah. All right. So go ahead, Maxie.
Questions, all the interrupted questions, any of the things. Well, I'm so grateful that, first of all, that for Addie, for you, and just, all of you that have purchased the book and spent your really precious time reading it. I thought, just for the context of this call, I'd give you a little bit of a just where the book came from in the body of my work, and then what has really kind of been standing out. And then Kim will just go into the questions that you think specifically relate to this group. But I've been working in the women's leadership space for the last 8 years. For a large majority of that, I have literally the best job on the planet, which is getting to talk to women in person for a living. I consider myself a facilitator of women's stories. And what was really cool about where this book was born from was I was on the road for about 90% of 4 years of my life. The plants were dead. I lived on a United plane more than my apartment in San Francisco, which is where I am right now. Thank God, I love being home. And as I was building out these global communities, it was all kind of focused around career. But the thing that I kept hearing over and over and over again from women was that they were feeling lost. Every conversation, it really didn't matter if I was in Milan or I was in Miami or I was in Dallas or I was in Minneapolis or here in San Francisco. It just, that sentiment just kept coming up over and over again. And I was like, what is going on? Because all of these people that I'm talking with, and I also know that I had felt this way at one point in my life, we're all really hardworking and, working our butts off and thinking about things in the right way and doing everything that we can. Why are we still feeling this way? No matter if the job is good or the job is trash, no matter if we're happy or we're, the sentiment was everywhere. And so when I looked at what are we telling women who are feeling this way? Because I know that when I felt that way, I didn't really, have anywhere to turn. And the places that I did turn to did a lot of the follow your passion and find your purpose. And, I think that advice has its place, but it's not a starting point. And it's typically always very well intentioned. But what I found was that, when we're feeling lost, that isn't the starting point, right? Because what's actually going on is you've either gotten to a place that you always said that you wanted to get to, And then you get there and you're like, well, been there. The bottom kind of falls out on that goal, right? And then you're just kind of like, well, if I don't want this, which is what I always said that I wanted, then what the heck do I want? And if I don't know what I do want, what do I do right now, right? And then we just kind of end up in this cycle. And it's to tell someone to go find their passion or their purpose is like, well, shoot, if it was that easy, we'd all be doing that already and we wouldn't be kind of in this cycle. And the other thing that I found was, if the bottom hadn't fallen out on your goals, then typically what was kind of coming up was that, we're just doing a lot of the shoulds, like we got the degree or we took the job or we kind of went on this path that whether it was a family or a parent or a partner or society kind of told us that was the right thing to do. And then we kind of wake up and it's just like, actually, like, I don't actually want this at all. And so I just did what I do, which is asked a lot of questions of women who had created enormous success, but had felt lost at one point in their career, and women who were currently feeling lost, and women who had just come out of it. And I looked at my own life and I was just like, damn, if we can, I believe that if we can get women just asking them really good questions, they'll get to their own answers. And then if we build that deep sense of self-belief, what'll happen is we'll actually end up paving that way and trust a little bit more that the path is created while we're stepping instead of before that, and just trusting that, which means trusting ourselves. But that, and it's why worksheets are in every chapter of the book, because, I don't know the answer to one woman or 100,000 women's answer to being lost. But I do know how to ask really good questions and be able to put that into a framework after a lot of interviewing and examining the issue and examining the advice that was out there. And, 4 years and a lot, which we can get into that story too, of really making the case for this book. It's out and it's in the wild and it's in y'all's hands, and we get to do this, which I'm enormously grateful for. So yeah, that's kind of the story of how it came to be and why it mattered to me. But there's a million different ways we could take this. So I'm just honestly more curious where everything kind of lands for y'all, and everything that you're doing with building your businesses and managing your lives and your families and what's helpful and what's not. I'm all game. So, oh wait, I don't hear you.
Forgot to mute myself. My kids were coming in the door from flag football.
We can have them join.
No, it's bedtime, so they should. But okay, so anyone have questions before? I have a couple things that I pulled from our book club pieces, and then a question that someone else had asked. But does anyone have questions before I go?
And also, the thing they'll add on to the questions piece is anything that also was a challenge for you, because I've done a few of these, and there are pieces where I'm down if something wasn't working too. This can be a place we deconstruct also.
Right.
So I'm game.
Anyone? Mara, do you have something? You look like you want to talk. No. Okay. Well, the two big things that were talked about the most when we did our I pulled quotes from the chapters, and then that was what they kind of talked on, whatever. So the two big ones, the one was the easiest way to get lost is by blending in.
Yeah.
And so that whole thing, there's tons of comments on that one. So talk to us about that part.
Yeah. I actually would love to talk to you about that, because there's a story behind that story there of that first chapter and kind of around that advice, right, of the easiest way to get lost is by blending in, was really tied into a starting point around being the highest expression of who we are. And what's interesting about that you all might find interesting, is when I was writing the book, I actually didn't write it sequentially. And if there's any writers out there, I remember when I was doing it, I was like, I don't know. I kept kind of emailing my editor and I was like, am I doing this wrong? Is it okay? I was really kind of following the advice that was just coming up for me, or the women's stories that were coming up for me. And, when you get a book deal, you've gotten a deal based on the fact that you have an outline. So I knew what the chapters were, and I had sold, a certain book. And when I sat down to write it, I had gotten through the majority of like the parts of the outline, and I was like, I just really feel like something is missing in this book, and I can't, like, something is just off around the way that it starts. And what I realized really quickly is that we can't actually address feeling lost without addressing all of the things around us that are telling us to go one way or to be one way or to do something one way. And so that is where that beginning chapter around being the highest expression of who you are came from, because I'm like, actually, all of this advice is total BS unless we're coming back to actually figuring out what are the things that make us feel like we're trying to shove ourselves into a mold. And I think, molds are interesting, right? And when I looked at my own life, and actually when I do a You're Not Lost keynote, I show a photo. It's embarrassing, of where I was at when I felt the most lost. And who that woman was a woman who was blow drying the shit out of her curly hair, and it was platinum blonde and half of it was fake. And I was obsessed about like all of these things that were me trying to shove myself into the mold of a sports broadcaster, which was my original path in my early career. And it's not surprising that when we are doing that, we're actually losing some of the magic, right? Because, like a mold is a cold, hard limit. And the reason that also matters, and you all probably have this woman in mind, but when I look at the people that make me feel the most comfortable being myself are the ones who are the most comfortable being themselves, right? And that has such a magical domino effect. And so, when I came to writing the book, I was like, oh, right, this is what's missing. This is where we start. You can't cheerlead self-belief and you can't cheerlead confidence without also acknowledging all of the places where we're told to be anything but that, right? And if you can have awareness around that and think about where are all the places that I'm constantly feeling like I need to change, and especially in the line of work that all of you are doing, you specifically know when those intentions around change, especially with your body or your health or your wellness, are intentional and values driven, or they're output and, what you're going to get out of it driven, and the latter never works, right? And so, that being the highest expression of who we are and not fitting into the mold was to get us to acknowledge that if you're feeling lost, it's not totally your fault. B, we also, I live in San Francisco and I am like a wild hyper feminist. And so there are pieces of the patriarchy that I'm obsessing and wanting to deconstruct. But regardless of how you feel about the patriarchy, the reality is we live in a world of really intense cultural messages around what it means to be a woman. And so, if we can acknowledge that we don't have to fit in that mold in order to be successful, it gives us a lot of freedom. That doesn't happen overnight, but the more that you look at, okay, where are those places? Where are the molds that I'm obsessing over fitting in? And then what would it look like if I just let them go or just stopped needing to fit so much? And it doesn't mean that it's going to happen immediately, but I think when you start to figure out like, oh, this is actually hasn't been working for me, then you start to be able to get closer to the opposite of that, which is magnifying everything with which you're trying to change. And so like in my life example, over the course of 10 years, it has a lot to do with hair, right? Like I've had these stages of first always blow drying it, never wanting to wear my hair curly, then only wearing my hair curly when it didn't matter. Then like, how do I wear my hair curly on stage when I'm in front of people? How do I wear my hair curly on camera? And then I was like, how do I wear my hair curly on a date? And so it's just, and I give that example to say that was over the course of 10 plus years of kind of chomping at these things that have now gotten me to a place where I feel the most magnified and the least lost. So.
Awesome. Okay. Well, that kind of
really long answer,
but it was good. It kind of leads into one of the questions that was submitted. And so yeah, we'll go to the question first and then we'll go back to the topic. What was the one thing that what was the thing that finally allowed you to ignore the perceptions of others and navigate your way through what other people were thinking of you?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I wish that I could say there was one thing. And I think that this is really important because I think it's completely tied in with the book's framework in general and my own perspective on how you get out of the lost fog, right? Which is that it's not one thing. It is not one change. It is a series of tiny choices and tiny moments where you're just kind of hedging, seeing how it feels, getting feedback, doing it again, seeing how it feels, getting feedback, making a different decision, right? And so for me, in the context of the confidence piece and the, stopping the mold, fitting, and being the highest expression of who I am, whether, a perfect example is like I curse a lot. And, there are people who will hire me and to come speak to their group and whatever, and who will tell my agent, could you not say this and this? And I'm like, you know who I am because you've read my book or you haven't. And so I'm not willing at this point, like, yes, there are very professional choices I will make. But also I don't want to have the rug pulled out from underneath me if I say the F word, because like it might happen. And so, there are just like a series of choices that end up happening where you test it out and then you get more confident in how you feel showing those things and saying those things and being more of yourself. And the thing that I can tell you is that feedback, and it kind of comes into pieces of this book also around, I fully believe that yes, we need a lot of internal validation, right? Like it's us and us. It's us in our life and from the inside out, but there's a lot that's happening around us that affects the choices that we make, and external validation. When you start to see people magnetized to you or drawn to you, or they compliment, like you're just so yourself, right? Like those are the things that when you hear them, they make you feel good, and it gives you a little bit of your own permission to keep doing that. And that can be like, right, I've given you examples that have to do with optics, because that was a really big one in my life by virtue of being on camera. So, but sideline that, and anything from what business you want to be running, the way that you want to run your family, the way that you're in partnership with someone, the way that, you spend your time. It doesn't have to be according to all of Inc.'s articles and what it means to be a like F all of that, and just do the thing that feels right to you. You do it in little small moments, you get feedback, and then you get more comfortable doing more of it. And before you know it, you feel more like yourself. And what I can tell you is I feel very myself right now. And I can promise you 10 years from now, there's going to be changes, because this is not like, oh, I made it. And neither is the absence of feeling lost, right? Like you can not feel lost right now and feel this deep sense of self-belief and still have moments of feeling lost. And I'll tell you very honestly that the strongest amount of lost feelings I've felt since some of what is in the book was when the book came out. And that took me a long time to admit. But it was me getting attached to outcome all over again, me feeling like I needed to live in this life of what it means to have this book doing so well and whatever else, and just getting really attached to the wrong things, and in a really ironically beautiful way and very annoying way. I had to relearn my own work and come back to these kind of small choices and small moments.
Yeah, so true. There, like it's always that. I always talk about how there's like joy and pain on this, and you ride the two rails of life, and it's just kind of that, like, I'm lost, I'm not lost, I'm lost, I'm not lost.
Yeah. And I think if you see it as an end game, right, that's so much of what gets us lost, versus just kind of trusting that you know the process and you know the exercises. And what I can say about, if I feel lost the first Tuesday every other month, it's cool because I have the tools now to get myself out of it, so that it's 24 hours and not 2 years, which I've done before.
Right.
So.
Right. Okay. So the second kind of big theme that we kind of really pulled out and we're really talking a lot about, which is kind of what this has become. Like,
Yeah.
we are a girl gang,
Yeah, you
and
are.
we are, yeah, we all come together and just become our own unique selves, and we're loved because we are who we are.
Yeah.
And so that was another big topic of the group, that kind of like, who is your girl gang, and who on the team, who's outside of the team that is your girl gang that you need to have
Yeah.
here, like that.
Yeah.
So
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I mean, this is probably my favorite chapter in the entire book. Just because I think, as you're seeing here, it's really powerful, and I have a lot of thoughts on why, but I will wait and see if you have an actual question before I start talking.
I don't have a question. Do you guys have a question about girl gang?
um,
Go ahead and roll. If they
well,
do.
no, yeah, I was just going to say, the essence of like that girl gang topic and that theme, there's so much power in taking inventory. And like, yeah, we can talk about, we know teamwork is important. We know our humans are important. Like, none of that, this is not new, right? Like, all of us know that our people matter and relationships are important. And you kind of, there's all kinds of issues with relationships, but in the context of when we are trying to get to the next stage in our life, to the next level of our business, to the next iteration of how we want to show up, and especially when we're not feeling those things and we're feeling stuck and we're feeling on the verge but scared, or whatever lost is looking like in that phase, I think one of our first instincts, and I found this in a lot of the interviewing, I found it in my own life, I found it in most conversations with women, is to shut that down and to not admit that this is actually how we're feeling, and to not admit that we're feeling lost when we should be feeling grateful, or we're feeling lost when this is everything that we said that we wanted, or we're feeling lost when like our family's super amazing, but like I still feel this way, right? Like, and you're like, okay, I'm not going to say anything, but then not saying anything doesn't really help. And then when you do say something, you feel a little bit better, but how do we actually take our community, know who that community is, and then most importantly, utilize them, right? And I'm preaching to the pastor right now, because y'all know how to do this probably better than I do. Preaching to the pastor, I don't know if that's a real thing, but I just made it up, because you could probably teach me some things. But within the context of community, one of the things that I found is when I actually took the time to inventory people that were my cheerleaders, who were my girl gang, who did believe in me, especially at a time when I was feeling lost, I was feeling fear probably more than I was feeling self-belief. And those scales were super tipped, right? I was on that rail of pain versus joy, Kim, that you just kind of like perfectly explained. And, sometimes we're in one more than the other. I know the word wasn't pain, but whatever you said that it was. But, for me, when I took the time to actually ask my community, where do you see me? What are like the core values that you think I'm showing up as, and that I'm bringing to the table? It's just, to me, it's still absurd to look back at that spreadsheet 5 years ago, because they literally wrote out my life as it currently is today. And when I was able to see what they saw, it was like, oh, right. Why am I not doing this? Like, if everyone else believes this for me, what am I doing? And, it's, having clarity around who those people are is another one of the reasons why I put that roster. Now, that roster has 15 people on it, right? And hopefully you heard me loud and clear when I said that it does not have to be 15 different people. What is important about that roster was really just about understanding who serves what. It could be 3 people in all 15 spots, right? But who are the people that you call when you need a strategy sesh? Who are the people that you call when you just need like a rah pick me up? Who are the people that you call when, you are homesick or whatever it is, and they make you feel like home? I think that when you are able to see who is consistently showing up for you, just kind of like stream of consciousness, writing that down, you then see, okay, these couple of people are filling some major holes. I have no one for this, which I think is really important. Or I didn't realize that someone that I'm spending a ton of time with shows up nowhere, in which case That's interesting, right? So I really think that sometimes it's just kind of pulling it out. And one thing might happen, which is that you realize, oh, wow, I have this super robust girl gang that is here and this treasure chest of humans that is already here. I just need to utilize them more. We can't get our solutions unless we're willing to talk about our problems. And so we want to talk about our problems to those people. And on the alternate side of that, when we are in a place where maybe that community isn't as robust, then we know what we're looking for. And just kind of talking about the various ways to actually build those relationships. And this is similar to what we were just talking about too, with there's different seasons of our lives. And sometimes, everybody might have moved, or everybody might be in a different life stage, or and you just kind of find yourself again like, oh, I need to reinvest in these relationships because relationships have changed, or I have changed and now I need something different. Not to say people need to go by the wayside, but it's just, if we take that time for intentional reflection around our people, we're setting ourselves up for, I think, long-term success, no matter, what new stage we're at.
Yeah, so true. Yeah. So true. Okay, another question was asked in here. Yes. Emily says, I love the part about start by starting. Exchanging the exactness of a future goal for the essence is less certain, but more promising. I struggle to want to know the exact outcome of my actions, but I'm learning to enjoy the process of what I enjoy, this team, and navigating along the way. Also, you begin to trust your gut instead of muting with the specific goals.
Yeah. So my, I just want to say a woman to that. Even though I know you quoted me, I'm not a womaning myself. I'm a womaning you pulling that out, because it's a really good thing even just to hear for myself right now via all of you, because it's not easy. It's not easy to take, to put effort into something and not know how it's all going to work out, or to do something new and not know how it's all going to work out, or to not get the immediate return or feedback. But the thing that I'll tell you, which I think all of us have to remember in any of our pursuits and in any of our endeavors, is that this stuff takes a long time, right? And so when we are doing something for the immediate feedback loop of success and taking that step, and it's like, okay, well, if I start this podcast, or I start this team, or I start this blog, or I start this business, or I start this new habit, next week I better know how this is working. It's just like, doesn't work like that. And I think we all kind of have to relearn. And I think it's also why coming back to those questions around what are the things that energize you? What are the things that make you proud with where you're at right now today? Because if you make choices around that, it doesn't mean that it has to be your full-time work. It doesn't mean that you have to go quit your job and start something new because, 100% of your life needs to energize you. It doesn't. But you do need to have an understanding of what that is, because it's what allows you to take those steps separate from outcome and be a little bit more okay with it. And, the story that I gave in the book, which I'll just tell you, all of you in person, the thing that categorically changed my life was signing up for a writing class, because I wanted to write about the topics that mattered to me. I wanted to be working with women's issues. I was so far gone in my own day-to-day joy that I was like, how do I just come back to the writing love that I've loved since I was a kid? And what is not in this book, I'll tell you, which is crazy, is, I signed up for a writing class, which it was pretty expensive. It was just more than my, where I was at in life and my career, I would want to spend on a creative hobby. But I just kept this kind of nagging feeling. And I did it. And that class is what introduced me to the people that were my rocket ship in the women's leadership space. My first job, getting to travel the world, really clearly understanding who I am and what I'm about, and being able to put that into action. And what is nuts about that is I never signed up for that writing class being this is going to be the thing that after 8 weeks is going to get me on my rocket ship. I was just doing it honestly because if you had made my life depend on it, I couldn't have told you what was next, and I just needed to solve for the now. But as the universe works, which is so wild, that agent who was running this class, because it was like a nonfiction writing class, she actually was colleagues with my agent then 7 years later. Randomly, I ended up at the same literary house. And when I went back to find her email to see, just like, I wanted to loop in with her about like where it had all gone like 7+ years later. And I went back to find her email and I found our original email exchange. And she first told me no, that I wasn't allowed in the class. And then she came back and was like, by the way, somebody dropped out last minute. So if you can, get the money to me and you're ready to commit, we'll start and we'll get you in that class. And I just looked back and I was like, first of all, I forgot that happened. Second of all, holy cow, this was like, it was all a little bit bigger than me. And I say that to say you just don't know where your actions are going to lead you. But if you're choosing them based around things that are bringing you energy and you stick with it, right? Like my blog has been on the internet since 2012. I was writing every week, twice a week for years. And they were terrible. I was writing what a cinnamon roll can teach you about life. Like, didn't have my voice, but was chomping at it. And then, however many years later, agents are like, oh yeah, you've got a following, you've got this, you've got that, like we need to do more work, but this book can definitely come to be. And it just, in those first few years, I wasn't blogging because I wanted a book. I was blogging because I loved to write, and it was worth it to me even when, because it energized me and it gave me power, and I didn't know it was going to turn into all of this.
Yeah. And like following your truth, and like really that's kind of like the piece that it was the passion piece that God put inside of you to like go in that direction, but you needed all those little things along the way to get you on the path.
Yeah, totally. And it's realizing those and just kind of following it without being so obsessed with the big picture and the big goal. Yeah. And like, I mean, I was a major goal junkie, and I still like deep down kind of want to be, but I also know that goals can just be pointless and performative if they're not, to your point, aligned with, those seeds of truth.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The last topic I have on my page that was like a big thing, unless people have their own quotes or things they want to talk about as well. So keep putting them in the comments, guys. The last one was the Wonder Woman. What would Wonder Woman do? And that was where I was like, I like give a massive fist pump to Addie because she's like Wonder Woman diva. But like she was on for like 30 seconds earlier, and we lost her. It's okay. We lost her. But I was glad I got to see her face for a little bit. Yeah. Wonder Woman. What would Wonder Woman do was a great chapter for me. Loved it.
And I'm so happy to hear that. You'll appreciate that I went and saw Wonder Woman with my my girl gang here in San Francisco, and we walked out, and one of them was like, what would we should just always be like, what the fuck would Wonder Woman do? I dropped the F-bomb in the quote in the book, but that's how it actually came out. And I was like, oh my God. Cause you watch that movie and she just like doesn't take no for an answer. And she's just like, sure. And deals with the repercussions, and it, it's like a little tongue in cheek, but it's like kind of true. And I think sometimes when we're doubting ourselves, when we're able to, whether it's a character in a movie or Beyonce or someone we really look up to on our team, it's actually a practice I pull a lot. I'm like, my work wife, Ellen, like, what would she do? How would she handle this? Like, if someone was writing the bio for me, how would they write it? Right. Like, so that we kind of step out of this playing small, not believing in ourselves, not sure if we should say something, not sure if we should own our truth, not sure if we should do it, not sure if we should negotiate it, and it's just like when we can pull ourselves out of our own body and persona and put it into someone that we do think is really confident, that we do think is just like on purpose and on vision, that we do think we respect and admire, it can help you depersonalize your own insecurity, doubt, and fear, which can really get in the way of taking the actions that help us build that sense of self-belief a little bit more and lead to bigger actions than lead to us doing stuff we never thought would have been possible prior.
Yeah, so true.
So.
All right. Anyone have anything else? Actually, just went back to the group thread one more time, but anyone have any other comments or questions or things they want to discuss?
I'm also down to go off topic of the book if anybody has something they don't think is spot on.
You just want to put like what your favorite things was in the chat, or unmute yourself and talk. You guys are always so quiet on here, but I know you have voices.
It's not lost anymore. Chris, I'm so glad you found your book.
Okay, well, if they're not going to talk, we have one more thing on here is that one of the things was when was a time, this is just a question for you. Like,
yeah, please.
When was a time that you did something that was like super scary, and then like recently or whatever, like how have you overcome those kinds of things? Like how have you let fear or not let fear get in the way of doing things?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I let fear stall me. I let fear delay me. So like I'm an avoider. When I am, it's like a little bit of like weird self-sabotage. I'm like, oh, I'm going to delay it. I'm not going to answer that. I'm not going to deal with it because I don't really know how to deal with it. And then if I don't deal with it and it falls through, then maybe I don't have to do it. Like I play that game with myself. It's completely ridiculous. But, I think that there have been, I am consistently just trying to make myself a little bit uncomfortable. And I think the thing that I am personally working on right now is bringing a live audience show to life here in San Francisco to solve for the consistency that we don't have of in-person experience in this space around self-help and personal development. We have like big tentpole conferences and, company events and, leadership retreats, but where is the thing that we can just show up week after week and have this kind of communal ritualized experience around so many of these topics. And so at the beginning of the year, it was all kind of like coming to me. I was like, I just don't actually know if I can bring this to life, if I can bring a team around me, if I can get the sponsorship dollars to do it. And I literally had to go back and take my own advice. I'm like, I see the vision so clearly, but I'm so scared of it, about bringing, it's called Woman On, which is this live audience talk show, right? So it's all of the pieces of like my background in sports broadcasting, the women's leadership space, the facilitating women's stories, as the host. And I was like, it feels too big. I don't know what to do with it. I don't know where it'll land. I don't know how to fund it, right? Like I was just in that, I don't know, but I see it really clearly. And this was all at the beginning of the year. And I was like, right, no, I just need to break this down into like, what is the smallest thing that I can do here? What is the absolute smallest thing that I can do about this thing that feels like it has a bit of clarity for me? And when I was able to ask myself that question, I was like, oh, right, I just need to go find the theater and the stage with which I'll be doing these interviews and the audience would be there. And so then I came back to my apartment. My best friend happened to be in town. She was staying at my apartment while I was out. And I told her, I was like, oh, I got it sorted. I just like have to find this stage. And she goes, have you been down a block from your place? There's an old church, Our Lady of Guadalupe, the divine saint of motherhood and femininity, as many of us might know. And it had been shut down for 30 years. I was like, yeah, I've walked by it a million times, but it's closed. And she's like, they just reopened it as a cultural center. And so it's a stage and a full like cathedral of seats, and it's pastels and it is super feminine. And she's like, I think that might be what you're looking for. And so I go and I met with them, and it was just crazy. Like all these little things started connecting. I was doing weekly salons there all summer. I'm about to sign contract for sponsorship. Like we're 10, almost 11 months in, but it's at every step of the game. When I'm scared, I stall. And when I stall, it's because it all feels too big. And so, the way to make it not feel big is to just continue to come back and make it small. Because when we make it small, we can do that. I can go find a stage. I can go hire a designer to do a deck. I can, I can send one email about sponsorship money and send that email again and send that email again times 1,000 to get 10 people to respond, right? And so, for me, whenever I am, that is a place that I've been very scared because I'm bringing something to life. And some nights I wonder, like, is it ever going to happen? Am I ever going to do it? I now have people depending on me. I put this out in the world. And, when I feel that way, it just really is like, okay, like, what is one thing that I can handle now and today and do about it? And you keep doing it. And I'm like, oh, right, this thing's about to be live in 3 months with some celebrity talent. Cool. So
yeah, love that. And like that applies to so much of what we do too. Like we're all shooting for bigger goals. And like when it seems overwhelming, just break it down into small manageable pieces.
And I mean, honestly, the stuff about the literature around goal setting is really interesting because most of the literature shows that long-term goals beyond 90 days aren't motivating. They're actually demotivating because we get the dopamine release from saying the thing out loud, but then that's not actually what's a motivator. But if we can break it down to smaller goals, and specifically 90 days is kind of where they orbit around, you're like, oh, right, 90 days, I actually know what I need to do today in order to get 3 months out. But if you're looking 10 years out, it's like, well, what? I don't know how to.
Yeah, what's going to make a difference?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're kind of a personal development space. We like to learn and grow. We'd love to know, like, what are some like key people in your life right now, in your ear or in your book space that you are learning from and growing from?
Oh man, I feel like I have a lot, so bear with me. Somebody that I always kind of look to, especially her early work around business building, is Danielle Laporte. Her work, I think as it's evolved over the years, has gotten very spiritual, but if you look at stuff like Firestarter Sessions and Desire Map, it's all very broke away from being, I can talk about that. It's super helpful and very action oriented. I love Brené Brown's work, which is not new, right? But she is just literally I will listen to every podcast that she has out in the world, just because I think it molds us being human in our work so beautifully. There's some podcasts that I'm obsessed with. So Glassdoor just came out with a podcast called In Pursuit. Brené has a interview on there that's amazing. She talks about sobriety, which you don't often hear her talk about, that I think is really interesting around her choices around things that she's stopped doing in her own health. I'm an Oprah obsessor also, so like all things Oprah. But yeah, I think Danielle Laporte, I think Brené, Oprah Obvi, and then I'm pretty obsessed with the work of Ava DuVernay. So even though the output of her work is film and entertainment, if you listen to her interviews around how she thinks about creating very diverse teams, how she's standing up in social justice, the way that she thinks about her own career, which by the way started at 33, she picked up a camera for the first time, right, and had not gone to film school. And it's the reminders that like, it doesn't matter if you're 65, 85, 25, like when you want to start a new season of your life, you can do it.
Mm-hmm. So. I love that you guys are talking, or that you guys are asking questions. Like Mara, you just asked, can you talk more about how you broke away from being goal-oriented obsessed? Because one of the things that I'm going to talk about tomorrow on the Happy and Fit call is the one presentation that was my favorite, or at least spoke to me the most, was goals versus vision, and those kinds of things. So like, I feel like we're all kind of in that space right now. And
totally.
So yeah, more.
So I'm going to speak to that because it was like everything that, kind of similar to what I've said. It was like a little bit of like a waterfall effect for me. It wasn't like one day I was like, I'm freaking done with goals. It didn't happen like that. It was, I think the first important moment was having set some really big, audacious goals, like ending up on camera in a top 5 market for a major sports network, doing that and then feeling nothing. And that was completely confusing for me. And I knew that had happened. It didn't, none of it got solved right away. But then when I came across Sean Akers' work around the happiness advantage, so that is someone and something to really look at, especially in this context of goals and what we're chasing. And he has a really amazing, quote on vision, which is around that, like the thing that, closes the gap from here. And a vision is just small intentional action in between. But The happiness advantage is really interesting because it shows that people who focus on day-to-day positivity and outcome versus long-term goals are far happier. They're more effective. They're more productive. They're better at what they do. And, his is really research and data-based, which is why I appreciate it layered on top of anecdotal storytelling, because, he's basically just like chasing goals is, it's just the way that I always describe it. It's an ever evaporating horizon line. You get there and there's new ones to set. So if you constantly are waiting to enjoy your life when, fill in the blank, right? When you have a person, when you have a baby, when you have this much money, when you have a book, when the blah, it just, I know even sitting in this life, with a book that was the end all be all of my focus and obsession. And then I got there and it's like, it doesn't change your life. Like it does and it doesn't. Like you're still the same person in it. And so, what are the things day to day that make you feel like your most powerful self versus waiting for later? And, the personal experience with coming across some of his research, with seeing it in I was like, just for me, I was like, I don't want to be that person anymore. Like I can still set goals. I can still have things that are important to me to achieve, but I refuse to let my love of my own life today be affected by whether or not I've accomplished something, because some of that is in our control and a lot of it's not.
So good. I'm just writing it down. That was good. Anyone else have questions? Amara, did that answer your question? Yeah. Anyone else? We have like 10 minutes left, guys.
I mean, I can talk for 10 straight minutes, but I'd rather not. I'd rather answer what's on your heart.
What is some advice that you would give someone who is kind of just starting out in this space?
I mean, like all of it. I would give them the book.
Just give them the book as they work through here.
Yeah, no, I mean, I really do think that I think it's always really important to establish and understand and examine your relationship to fear. I wrote this in there, but being able to reframe fear as friction. And also that the end goal is not to be, I loved that. So I heard, sorry, I just
go for it.
Quote in my head. I heard Ava DuVernay speak at a conference that I was at a couple of weeks ago, and she was talking about fear specifically. And she was like, my goal isn't to be fearless. My goal is to fear less, because it never goes away. And I think we all know that, right? And whenever we're kind of starting, wherever it is that we're starting, in whatever space that we're starting, that energy and that excitement can very easily get traded off by the fear of of not doing it, of not being enough, of not knowing. And there's a lot of power in being able to understand that if you're feeling fear, that really is just the friction of movement, of expansion, of moving into a space that you haven't been in before. And it doesn't need to be as loud and as stopping as it often can be. And so, I think when we are able to learn our relationship to that, and keep acting and knowing that it's not ever going to go away, we get back a lot of our power, because it stops making decisions for us, and we make a decision knowing that, okay, cool, that's going to be there, but I'm going to try and not live in that space as much.
Yeah. Moving anyway.
Yeah.
You guys are so quiet. Please
keep talking, Mara. I'm going to copy and paste this to my parents. They're finally telling me to talk. I'm told not to talk in my life. No, I appreciate that. I think that, we're all just doing it. And the other thing that came up as I was thinking about your question, also outside of the context of fear, of something that I'm personally just really working on and working with is how we create and how we do live what energizes us and do keep moving, but do it without so much time spent looking at other people's lives. I'm just so over it. And what that actually means is that constantly absorbing other people's lives and work and updates and all of the things is just, we know that social media is having an effect on our brains. We can logically say this doesn't feel great and this doesn't feel good, and we know in our body what happens when we like see someone else's big win on Instagram or whatever it is. But it's another to actually change the behavior. And so I have really been looking at like, I've got women in my life who are dear friends. They're peer mentors. They are literally just crushing it, and a lot of people know about them and and I know the ins and outs of their life. I know the fires behind the scenes. I know how shitty one really good looking like product launch actually was, right? Mm-hmm. And yet still, when I see their Instagram about it, I still feel like shit, because I'm like, oh, I'm not where they are. I'm not whatever, even though I know that it was a disaster. And so, I give that story or that like sentiment just to say that like, even though we know that these things aren't helpful, unless we're actually making behavioral changes around it, it really can get us in a rut and get us stuck and keep us from living our own path. And I have reservations and like retract a little bit about saying it or even talking about it, because at this point it feels like a little cliche, like, like the highlight reel, blah, blah, blah. You don't really understand people's behind the scenes. And it's like, yeah, the Pinterest quotable is a Pinterest quote for a reason, because it's true. But so I have just actively been looking at how do I actually change that in my life? When, like all of you, we have businesses that would not be here without connection on social, on newsletters, on blogs, on podcasts, and how, these users come to understand our work and our products. But I have been doing a lot of reading around like, okay, like I can take this as fact, but I also know it doesn't feel good. And I also know that I love my life so much more when I make, when I'm on it all less. And so what is the balance? And while I have not perfected it and have not figured it out, the things that have absolutely helped me have been taking my phone out of my room. Like hands down was like one of the biggest changes I made, taking away notifications, using do not disturb more. And then there's been a couple books that I've read around this topic, just for real strategies, but digital minimalism, Cal Newport's books. He's a little like male hackery for me. But the books are pretty helpful in just kind of laying out the literature around what it's actually doing to our brain. So aside from just comparing ourselves and not feeling great and not feeling like we're doing enough and not owning and celebrating our own wins, aside from all of that, it just doesn't allow us to get into flow. And flow is one of the key indicators in that day-to-day, that presence, and joy. And so I noticed that when I shut everything down and I just write for 60 minutes, like just 60 minutes, it could even probably be 45, but that's all that I'm doing, I will close out and be like, wow, I love life. Like this feels so good, because I know that that is a place of flow. It'll be different for everybody, but what it feels like to actually get there in our brain, instead of working here, we're working all the way, kind of all the way with a little bit more depth. His other book is Deep Work. And they're both related, but it's just really top of mind, because I think it gets us feeling lost. It gets us feeling in our fear. It gets us feeling not confident. And that I'm talking about is constantly looking at other people's lives. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah. And the kind of catch-22 for us is that our business is built on social media.
All of us. 100%.
All of us.
Yeah. Like, and so that is, and the reality is like, we can't just shut it down, right? It's why I don't like this conversation that much, because it's, you can get extreme and whatever, but the reality is like, what do the behavioral changes actually look like? So I've been, and being able to do both. So I have started to tell friends, hey, by the way, like I don't look at stories. I'm like, if I'm not liking your photos, I swear it's just because I'm not seeing it, because I'm trying to do a lot less scrolling. And, you know, office hours of like only checking the social stuff between 9 and 10 or 7 and 8. That has been helpful. I'm not doing that right now just because I'm a little bit of a disaster with it and I'm trying to figure it out. But it's hard too, right? Because like your engagement, like I wouldn't be here if I wasn't on social. Yeah. Literally right now, right here with you, I wouldn't be here if you and I weren't going back and forth on Instagram. And I was like, yeah, duh, I'm so in. And so, and like this is why I exist, is to have these conversations. So, you know, it requires creativity. And I'm just like, I'm unwilling to just like follow, like, you know, where our attention goes matters. And so if it's constantly on other people's lives, it's not
a good, healthy thing. Yeah, for sure. And then maybe like the last topic we'll talk about tonight, with Emily just wrote, I love the magic is the mindset. Yeah. We talk about obsessing over our talents and recognizing lack of successes and talents isn't because you're not good at, but said it's just not there yet.
Yeah. So the that kind of theme and that body of work, and if anybody's interested in it, and you've also probably all potentially heard about Carol Dweck, but you know, it is her research around the growth mindset is really interesting, and it goes along with this, Emily, of just like being willing to suck at things and being willing to, you know, I think we, especially in the zeitgeist that we're kind of in, right? Like everybody's an expert and everybody like needs to be a thought leader and needs to like be the go-to person. I'm the first to say, I'm a facilitator. Like I don't actually consider myself, like people are like, do you coach? Are you I'm like, I'm none of those things. I literally just ask women questions for a living and love to like write and talk about those universal truths. It happened to be very voicey while I'm at it. And, you know, I think being able to own that, if I wanted to be a poet, I could go start and learn poetry. If I wanted to be a filmmaker, if I wanted to be better at management, if I wanted to be a health and wellness coach, I have an opportunity to do that by lowering the barriers and not expecting myself to be perfect. We're already good at it. Like, where did we get there? And actually by not viewing our skills as static and by viewing everything with possibility and everything as something that can be worked on, we give ourselves so much more freedom. And it just, you know, it lowers the burden, because you move away, when you move away perfection, you have a lot more option. I'll give you a perfect example. This year I was asked to write a celebrity's book and ghostwrite her book. And I was like, you know, I have always said I am on this planet to facilitate women's stories. I just wrote my book. Am I supposed to like write someone else's? What? And I was like, but this is really interesting, because it is literally it is facilitating a woman's story at its like longest level. I was like, this is super interesting. So I was like, okay, like it was not anything that was on my roadmap, but I'm going to take this call. I know I won't get it because I have no idea what I'm doing. And there's a lot of really amazing celebrity ghostwriters out there. Like, it's a whole secret market of like incredible talent, because most people don't write their own books. I wrote mine, by the way. And so I just kind of kept going through the process, and then I got the deal, and she picked me, and she agreed to my terms, which I thought I was like kind of shooting for the moon. You know, a number of these things happened. And then when I went to like, actually, I was like, oh no, I have to actually do this. I have to figure out how to write this person's book. I've never written someone else's book. And so, but I was like, you know, I'm a great writer and I'm a great question asker. So I'm sure I can figure this out, but let me go talk to some people who have done this before. And when I talked to all of them, they're like, yeah, no, nobody knows how to do this. You just kind of like figure out your own way, and you figure out your own method, and you figure out what works for you and what works for them. And it was such a reminder of what I have known to be true by having so many conversations with really powerful women, which is that no one actually knows what they're doing. Like, we don't actually know. And if you know some of it, and then as you expand, you don't know again, but you know some of this, and you're building on that. And it's not to say like, oh, we have no idea what we're doing. We do, but when we're moving and we're trying new things, you know, having an opportunity to just like not be great at it and figure it out and and maybe not know, but know it in past lives of past chapters of your life or in past roles, and be able to pull from those things and then talk to other people. And they're like, well, they don't really know either. Like, I can do this. Who's to say I can't do this? And so, and then I wrote a book for someone else in 2.5 months and just turned it in a couple weeks ago, and it'll be out in a few months. Can't tell you really any more than that, but it's just to say it's like really random stuff happens. But if I had shut that down because I was like, I don't know how to ghostwrite a book, I would have missed out on a really cool experience, and a lot of money. So
awesome. Yeah. So it's just more of like just living out your dream and
it's just
going with the flow.
Yeah. Being willing, at the heart of that, like really being willing to know, where the talents, kind of align for you, but also like, if you're not best in the world at it, that you can get better, right? Like when you apply your talents to new scenarios, you don't have to be the best. You just have to be willing to ask and to learn and to show up for it anyways.
Yeah. One of our other leaders on our team, Julianne, a quote that she throws around a lot is, "This is all our first chance to run the sun." Like, so
it is.
We're all just figuring this out as we go.
We're a mom for the first time. We're a writer for the first time. We're a business owner for the first time. Like, we're all figuring it out.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Maxie, for your time tonight.
Oh, you guys, thank you. I'm so grateful.
We know that you're like limiting yourself on social media, but where can they find you and follow you?
No, I'm just limiting how ongoing I am with it through the day. No, I'm on Instagram all the time at Maxie McCoy. I write weekly and like really intentional and thoughtful posts based on, what I'm hearing women talk about and what I'm going on in my own life at maxiemccoy.com. And you can sign up for the newsletter there. And then the other thing that I would ask of y'all, which is a huge help for me, and it seems so silly, is Amazon reviews matter so much. So when you finish the book, and if you enjoyed the book or pulled, anything from it, reviews go a really long way in getting the book to have more visibility in search. And it's really annoying, but it would really help when you're finished if you could write one.
Absolutely. We will be all over that.
But stay in touch with me, please, on Instagram or via, kind of my ongoing writing. And I'm really so grateful that everybody is in, and your leadership and bringing everyone together around my book. It means the world. And it's so fun to see how it kind of lives and lands for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, it was super powerful for a lot of people. We had a lot of new people come on to the team when we started it, and it was just kind of that first
doing it.
Yeah, dig into some personal development, and have really learned a lot. So thank you so much for everything tonight.
Yeah,
for taking your time to be with us. We always take a team picture at the end and talk about
we're gonna zhuzh
all the fun stuff in our team page, kind of top takeaways and things. So, all right, everybody on? Are you ready? All right, 3, 2, 1. Yay! Okay, Chris even had her book in the picture. She found it. All right, thank you so much.
Ashley, you're like, can you help me market? Thanks. Okay, bye, y'all. Have a good night. Thanks for joining.
Thank you so much for being on, guys. See you back later. Bye.